Hey guys and gals, this is Cal from Nerdy Weasel. With the re-release of Mod Organizer 2, I felt it would be helpful to present an overview of the features and functions that the manager provides. This video has information for both the first-time user and can be considered a refresher course for those who may be returning to it. The information provided here is not specific to any particular game that Mod Organizer 2 supports. Even if you see me working with setups for Skyrim Special Edition and Fallout 4, the hints and tips are fairly universal. Because it is quite extensive, I have provided timestamps in the description of the video below to help you navigate through things. My last video on Mod Organizer 2 was on installation and/or upgrading, so if you need help with those issues, a link to that video is provided in the description as well. Like I said, it's a long video, so no more intro. Let's go. Alrighty, and here we are at the desktop and we'll get started. Now, of course, you know, in the last video, I set up both my Mod Organizer 2 for Skyrim Special Edition and for Fallout 4, and I have desktop startups for both of those. Now, of course, you remember that you can only run one Mod Organizer 2 at any given time. So if you have one open, you can open the other. Just remember that. We're going to start out with Mod Organizer 2 for Fallout 4 because it is completely blank, and that way I can show you first time setup, the whole thing. So we're going to start off with a tour, and basically this is what everything is. Now, of course, if you know all this stuff, just skip ahead. I put all the timestamps in the bottom so you can skip ahead to the different sections if you want to learn different things. But if for first-time users, this may be very important. We are going to start in the upper left-hand corner, and you have the MO2 selector button. We'll just call these function buttons. And this would be if you had installed an instance version of Mod Organizer 2 instead of a portable, which is what I suggest. You could click on this button and it would open up a different game as selected from the menu, whether it be Skyrim Special Edition, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, whatever it may be. But of course, I used a portable install, so that one doesn't work. Next, you have the install from a new mod from an archive. We're just going to run through these very quickly. I'll talk about functions later. You have the globe button, which will direct you to the Nexus via the internet, and you can go search for mods according to the mod that you have or the game you have available. In this case, Fallout 4 or Skyrim Special Edition. You have the configure profiles. You have the executable button, the tools button, and the executables button. Come across the top, you have the message alert button, and basically this is going to tell you what you may or may not have a problem with your system, or it may alert you to important information that you need to know. If there is a new install available or new update available for Mod Organizer 2, it will highlight this globe right over on the right-hand side, and it will tell you you can update your Mod Organizer 2, and you just click to do so. And of course, the help button. Back over to the left, we have the profile drop-down menu. I only have one profile right now. That's default. We'll talk more about that later. We have the open list options, the restore backup button, and the create backup button for the left pane. Then, of course, you have the executables drop-down, which runs directly in line with the executables function button, but it'll show you all the executables that you have available to you. Run the executable that you've selected in the drop-down, in this case, be Fallout 4, but it could be F4SE that you would run. And you would always run the game if you want to install the mods using this button. So just remember, if you're going to run a game, whether it's through Fallout 4 or F4SE or Skyrim Special Edition, Script Extender, SKSE64, you would run it through Mod Organizer. Of course, you have the shortcut button that can place it on your toolbar, desktop, or the start menu. We'll talk about that later. Moving back over to the main pane, we have the left pane. This is going to be your mods tab. This will show all of your mods, whether it's non-Mod Organizer 2 organized, such as all the DLCs. It could be SKSE64 scripts or Script Extender scripts, or it could be a simple plugin mod, or it could be a texture mod. Everything will be managed on the left pane. And then you can organize by mod name, the flags, category, version, priority, whatever it may be. Over here on the right tab, this is more function pane. It will show plugins, archives, data, saves, and downloads. Most of the time, you're going to be spending your time using plugins and downloads. Back over here to the left, towards the bottom of the left pane, you have the filter button, which will open filters. We can talk more about that later, but you can categorize it in different ways. Or you can just press anywhere on the clear section and it will put it back the way you had it. And then you can close the filter button. You can also group the mods in different ways. I usually just leave them at no groups. And then you also have a filter name for whatever you're looking for. You can put in Wasteland and it'll pop up Wasteland. Most of the time I don't use that. And then under the right pane, you have the same filter name. You can put in Fallout or whatever it may be. And of course, on downloads, you have the show hidden, which is or all the downloads you may have hidden, and then a name filter for that as well. At the very bottom, you have the message tab, and this is basically going to tell you important information that you may have an error or something, or it'll tell you what Mod Organizer 2 is doing. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what each of the individual buttons do. In this case, we're going to first install a new mod from an archive. There are two different ways to do this. You could either click on this and select a file that you may have, or, quite frankly, I don't really use this one a lot because I can do different things. I'm just going to install, just so you have an example, you would click on the button and then go find the archive. And in this case, it's a WinRAR, but it could be a 7-zip file, whatever your archive manager of choice is. I use WinRAR. Select that file and then open it, and you would get the installation dialog menu. And you can go and do it that way. Quite frankly, I don't use that very much because if I set it to downloads, I can directly drag and drop whatever that archive may be into my downloads tab and then install it from there. That way it is permanently saved for me and I can go ahead and keep it however I want it and uninstall it or reinstall it later at a given time. Delete that mod from my downloads tab because I'll do it later. The Open Nexus Network for more mods, you click on that and it'll take you directly to the Nexus page for the game that you are working with, in this case, Fallout 4. The Configure Profiles button. This is the menu for this, and basically you are going to start out with 1. That'd be default. My suggestion is to go ahead and make a copy of it and rename it to Vanilla. And the reason why I do this is so that I always have something that I can do that is basically just the vanilla game. You could also go ahead and rename it to remain default to vanilla, but I always just kind of keep a couple of them hanging around. So that way I know what I have. But in this case, I'm going to remove vanilla. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes. And instead I can rename it vanilla. So you see both options. You can also go ahead and create a new profile and add a new profile name for that. And it'll basically set up a basic default mods list for you. I wouldn't say there's any benefit to doing so. You've seen remove, we've talked about rename. Whenever you create a new profile or make a copy of an existing one, make a new copy, and this will be my working profile that I will generally do most of my gaming on. I always call it DWM or Dirty Weasel Media, but you can also name it to a specific character or a specific type of character that you may be running. It may be a archer setup that is specifically chosen a bunch of mods that will be for archers or whatever it may be. But I generally have them for specific characters or a base profile to work everything off of. You click OK, and then you can modify that in 2 different ways. You can go ahead and set local game saves so that all the saves for that specific profile will be saved in your Saves tab on your right pane. And I would always go ahead and click Local Game Settings so that your any settings from Mod Organizer 2 will be applied. And you can go ahead and close that down. You can also go ahead and transfer saves from one profile to another. If I had some saves to do it, I would show that to you. But we're going to close that down. Now you have in your profiles dropdown, you have 2 of them. You have Vanilla and you have Dirty Weasel Media. Of course, there's no difference between the 2 of them. Moving on to the executables button, we have configure the executables that can be started through Mod Organizer. This is the first thing you'll notice. Go and open this up so you can now actually see everything there is to do on this. You will see automatically that Mod Organizer 2 has recognized that I have installed the executables and the DLL files for Fallout 4 script extender. It has automatically recognized that I have loot installed, and it will tell me all the information about that. If you want to see the information on this, you'll go title, the binary, which is where it actually starts the program, and then the program folder file that it actually started in. Arguments, if there is a specific executable that needs an argument, it will be in this tab, but for right now, we're okay. For loot, you'll see it actually has an argument applied. I would suggest go ahead and leaving the Overwrite Steam app ID and the create files in mod instead of overwrite. I would leave these both blank. There are certain mods that may be desirable, but I think having everything go to your overwrite is much better. Use the application icon for shortcuts. If you wanted to go ahead and have it for loot, you would see that, and I'll show that to you in just a second. You can modify different things. If I wanted to modify the Fallout 4 script extender for whatever reason, you would click modify. If I wanted to remove it, I can't remove these because they're hard to install. But if I had something, and I'll show you an example in just a second, you could remove it if you wanted. So let's go ahead and install something I have already. And we are going to start out and you go ahead and click blank anywhere, just a blank space, and you'll input the title of the executable that you want to do. In this case, we're going to make it Fallout 4 edit. This is the Xedit program that you can modify ESPs and different things. Now we are going to go ahead and search for that executable, and we'll come to the right of the binary tab and click that button and browse system files. And in this case, I've already pulled it up, but if you wanted to see where it was at, Fallout 4 edit, open that folder and select the executable for Fallout 4 edit and press open. And now you can see the directory is applied to that for that executable. If you want to press start in, you would then go ahead and select the folder that the executable is located in and select folder. There are no arguments for this. It'll automatically open because it's already designated for Fallout 4. I would say use the application's icons for shortcuts and leave the other two blank. And we will click add. And it is done. In this case, if I wanted to remove it for whatever reason, now the remove button is activated. If you want to remove it, you could. And then close it. And once again, you could modify that if you wished. But that's all there is to on the modify executables. Now, of course, on this button goes along with the executable drop down on the right-hand side. And now you can see I had F4SE, loot, and now we have FO4 edit. For any of these things, and I generally will do this, for any tools, I will go ahead and select it and go to my shortcut on the right-hand side and put it on my toolbar. And you can see it's now populated right there. I'm going to do the same thing for Fallout 4 edit and put it on my toolbar. Now I have easy access to it, and I can leave my executable to whatever I want and make this a dedicated run button for F4SE. If I want to run that executable or that tool, I would then do so. And you can see loot will open up automatically. And the same thing goes with FO4 edit. Back over to the left, we have the tools button, and basically this is the any editor and the configurator. The any editor is pulling directly from your documents tab inside your file folder. I'll show you where that is. Of course, under documents, you have my games, Fallout 4, and then you have the Fallout 4 ini and the Fallout 4 prefs.ini. So it's pulling directly from there, but you will see 3 tabs inside of your ini files for Fallout 4. You do not have this in Skyrim Special Edition. You have the Fallout 4 ini, which I showed you, the Fallout 4 prefs.ini, and the Fallout 4 custom.ini. If you wish to add any custom ini edits into this, you could either input them directly into this one, and there may be times where a mod author will suggest that you create a Fallout 4 custom.ini, and this is where you do that. If you want to go ahead and change anything inside your ini files, you would make a change and then go ahead and press save. So if you want to change the shadow update time to 0.5, you would then click save, and it would automatically save it. I'm going to put it back to 1.0 and save it again. And the same thing goes with the Fallout 4 prefs.ini. You can make any changes you want to this, and then press save, and it will be applied directly to your game. And it'll be applied directly to the profile for which it is selected. So in other words, if I have a different set of any edits for a different profile based off of a different character or a different play style, those any edits would be directly applied to the profile for which this is selected. If you have a different one, you may have a totally different set of any files here that could be applied for whatever reason. The other function in the Tools button is the configurator. And we'll select the drop down for this. You have General, and these are applying different values to the any files I just showed you. But what it does is make it a little more easy to maneuver around, and you can go and select different things, screen splatter. This one's selected true. So in the any edit for this, for B blood splatter enabled, it would equal 1, or it would equal true, depending on how it's configured, or it would be set to false, which would be 0 or false. And it would automatically change those any settings. And you can do the same thing for all these different things. In general, I would tell you to not mess with this unless you know exactly what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And the final button in the upper left-hand side is the Configure Settings and Workarounds. This is the one we're going to use most for right now. And you'll have a number of tabs. We're going to start first on the left-hand side. This is the General tab. There is nothing in language. Under Style, this is my default none. I always just like this because I think it looks better on YouTube. But many people like the dark ones. Press OK, and you have a dark profile. Personal preference, whatever you want to do is fine. Press OK, put it back to my white. Next one down is install pre-releases or betas. This is for Mod Organizer 2 if there are any betas available to install them. If you're not doing testing for Mod Organizer 2 betas or test versions, I would say leave this unchecked. User interface, the compact download interface and the download meta interface are different views of the downloads tab in the right pane. You can play around with them, check them and uncheck them, see which one you like. I generally leave it with the download meta information. It just kind of makes more sense to me, and I can actually look at everything I need to see. Reset dialogues, it will reset stored information in the dialogues. Nothing to worry about here. And configure mod categories. If you want to rearrange your categories for whatever reason, I generally leave that alone. The next tab over is paths, and this is where we get to the very important stuff. So we need to open this up. And the first one is the base directory. We can see where Fallout 4 is installed. The mod organizer is installed for Fallout 4, and it's under Steam Apps Common, Mod Organizer 2.1, Fallout 4. This is not the game directory. This is where Mod Organizer 2 is installed. If you want to change that for whatever reason, you would then go ahead and click the binary button to the right of that field, and it'll direct you to where you want to go. Each of these, downloads, mods, caches, profiles, overwrite, use the base directory to refer to the base directory. In other words, the base directory is right here. So it's using the base directory, Steam Apps Common, Mod Organizer 2.1 Fallout 4, Downloads folder. Then the Mods folder, Web Cache, Profiles, and Overwrite. Let me show you where that's at. For Steam Apps Common, Mod Organizer 2 Fallout 4, Downloads, Mods, Overwrite, Profiles, and everything else that may be installed of that. So downloads, mods, caches, profiles, overwrite. They're all located in this folder for Mod Organizer 2. My suggestion for anyone who is like me that has a separate hard drive to hold all your downloads is to direct your downloads to that location. It does not affect the running of the game to have your downloads on a separate hard drive. It is simply a storage place to hold your downloads and then draw them to install into your left pane over on this side. That's all it's doing. The mods will still be installed under mods of this file directory for Mod Organizer 2. All right, that follow? There is no benefit to having your downloads with your main Mod Organizer 2 directory. It's just some place to store things. In my case, I go ahead and have them on a separate hard drive there we go, under storage. You can see mod organizer. And then Fallout 4 downloads is a new folder I created in my hard drive under mod organizer. And you can see there's nothing in there. But it is a new folder I created. I'm going to select that folder. And you can see it's now changed the location that it'll be sending my downloads to. So every time you download a mod from the Nexus, it would go into mod organizer 2. It will go into my D drive, which is my storage drive, under mod organizer Fallout 4 downloads. The rest for mods, caches, profiles, and overwrite, I suggest leaving them alone. I want to save that, so I'm going to press OK and then open it back up. We did paths. Now we're on to Nexus. This is your Nexus login information. You can go ahead and select different things, but I'm going to put a example of what my Skyrim Special Edition is looking like on the right-hand side over here. But basically, a couple things you need to know to automatically log into the Nexus when the game is clicked. Your username, password, clear cache, I would just leave that alone unless you have some problems. The offline mode, leave it alone. Use HTTP proxy. If it uses system settings, I would suggest leaving that alone. And then the associate download with manager links. This is the download with manager button you'll find on the Nexus, and it will associate those buttons with mod organizer 2. It is very important that you press this for the game that you're selecting. If for whatever reason you're bouncing back and forth between different games because of portable installs, you may have a problem where the Nexus is not downloading because it says the application is not running. Go back into your settings and re-click download with manager links, and it will reestablish that link. Known servers, if you can see over on the right-hand side, I have a bunch of preferred servers, and I've dragged and dropped one over. The first time you log into the Nexus through mod organizer, it will populate this field the first time you download a mod. And you just drag one over whatever your preferred server is if you're a premium user. Username. This is for Steam. This is your Steam username and your Steam password. I've never put anything in these things, and Steam works just fine. But if you ever run into a reason to do it, this is where you put your username for Steam and your password for Steam. I don't want this stuff floating around. I just leave it blank. Plugins. These are all the plugins that are for Mod Organizer 2. There may be specific things that you need to do for whatever reason, and if there's a mod author note that says you need to enable or disable a certain thing, a BSA extractor. In this case, BSA extractor is always false, but let's say a full mod installer. So you have a bunch of options here. If you ever need to make a change for whatever reason, highlight it, drop down it, and set to false or true, whatever the case may be. Press OK. We need to open that back up because I need to save those settings. Those are the plugins. Blacklisted plugins, I would say just leave these alone. Workarounds. This is the Steam app ID, leave it alone. Load mechanism is mod organizer. I would say just leave it alone. Nexus mod manager version, this is the one it's emulating. I would suggest leaving this until we know more about Vortex, and I'm sure El Presidente or Le Presidente is working on that if Vortex has some new things that it has to do. Hide inactive ESPs, ESMs, leave this blank. Do not do this. Just leave it alone. Force enable game files, leave it checked. And display mods installed outside of mod organizer. That is talking about these mods. Anytime you have something that's installed through Steam or installed as a game file for DLC, it will display those mods outside of mod organizer. In other words, a non-mod organizer organized mod. And then backdate BSAs, unless you know what you're doing, don't do this. These are workarounds for problems, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then finally diagnostics. Log level, I would suggest leave it at recommended, and the crash dumps, leaving it at mini, which are both recommended. The max number of dumps to keep, I have set mine at 5. Unless you're doing a lot of crash testing, I would leave it right at 5. All right, moving on. We talked about profiles. We talked about how to manage those. You have the open list options. You're going to get a bunch of different things. You can do different functions through this drop down, the same as you would if you right-clicked on a mod inside the left pane. I would suggest go ahead and just keep this in mind. It's something you can do. Most often you do refresh if you're looking for something that may not have updated to Mod Organizer 2. Kind of a weird organizer on this, it's basically a restore backup followed by create backup. Create backup will create a backup of what you've done in the past. So if you think you're going to do something really stupid or you're not really sure what you're doing, go ahead and create a backup, and then you can restore that backup if you completely screw things up. Moving on, the executables drop down. In this case, we showed you how to set up shortcuts. So you can go ahead and run different things through this. You're going to run Fallout 4 script extender. If you need to run the game through the script extender, you would do so. If you need to run FO4 edit, you could do so, or you could do the shortcuts on your toolbar, however you want to do that. You can also go through the edit and see the same menu as you saw on the executables button on the left-hand side. Not much to say about that. Before we get into managing mods, let's just walk you through a basic installation of a mod. Remember we talked about the Fallout 4 scripts that are contained in the Fallout 4 script extender. We talked about you could either select them from the install mod from an archive button, and you can go ahead and select that and open it. But like I said, I recommend that you go ahead and drag whatever mod you're doing and drag it over onto your downloads tab, and it'll automatically populate. And of course, it's now saved into your hard drive location that you chose in the path tab under settings button. So if you want to install a mod, in this case, the Fallout 4 script extender scripts is what we're looking for. And this is just an example. You've now put it into your downloads tab, and this could be a mod that you've downloaded from the Nexus. Go ahead and double click to install. In this case, you'll see that you are now faced with a naming problem. In this case, F4SE, let's change it, _ scripts. That's good naming profile, but you can name it other things, right? 0.6, 6.05 if you want it to be 6.05. That way it has a name associated with the version of Fallout 4 script extender. And you'll basically going to see a couple different things. You're going to have, in this case, the no game data on top level issue. And what you're going to do is you're looking for a correct setup. And basically, this is going to be things that are put into your data folder within Fallout 4. So in this case, we're going to right click on F4SE 00605, and we're going to set data directory. In this case, see, we have data. We have all these different executables and DLLs we don't need in this. And we're going to right click on set data directory. And it's going to only install what we tell it to do. And scripts, that's all we want inside of the data folder. If we were to click on the arrow button to the left, it will tell you everything that's in that's going to be in that data folder. These are all PEX script files. Same thing goes with the source user and a bunch of PSC files. That's all you need to know about that. But basically, you see that Fallout 4 script extender scripts 6.05. The scripts is the only thing we're looking for, and it looks good. Most of the time, it's going to be pretty easy to do when you see things like this. But basically, this is the basic thing. So we go ahead and then click OK. Now you have the Fallout 4 script extender scripts 6.05, and we would go ahead and activate it. Now all the scripts have been installed. The reason why it doesn't really matter what we installed off of this is because we selected only the data that we wanted. If you double click on the mod, F4SE scripts, you're going to be presented with an information tab, and we'll get more into this later on, but basically I want you to see what's happening. In file tree, you can see the only thing we installed into mod organizer mods in the left pane is the scripts, exactly what I showed you. All those DLL and executables that you saw with the main archive aren't here. So it doesn't matter what's in your download, you've only installed the scripts. That's how it works. Let me go on to the Nexus and find a mod to install into Fallout 4, and we can go through that. Let's just go ahead and go this way. Let's go on to the Nexus. And right at the front, we have a Colt 6520 10mm pistol. Sure, let's go ahead and install that. That looks good. We would go ahead and go to our files. Mod Manager download. There you can see it's downloaded onto my Downloads tab for the Colt 6520. All right, so that's the mod I wanted. Just that easy. You've now downloaded the mod from the Nexus, and it's automatically populated into your download section. You would double click to install. Manual. Now you can see once again, no game data on the top level. Right click, set data directory, and you have a bunch of stuff. Materials, meshes, scripts, sound, textures, and an ESP. Go and click OK. And you would click activate. Now what that has done is activated that mod inside of your new mod organizer 2 Fallout 4 profiles. Okay, that's for Dirty Weasel Media. If you go to vanilla, notice they're not activated because this is the vanilla profile. DWM, they're both activated. Of course, you want to double check that the ESP that was contained in that mod is now active on your right pane over here. Now, let's say you go ahead. I'm really happy with that pistol. I can go ahead and right click on the Colt 6520 and remove it from view. You don't need to mess with it anymore. Remove it from view. And we can go ahead and remove the Fallout 4 script extender scripts and remove it from view. So now you have a blank downloads tab. If you want to go ahead and show hidden, there they are again, and you could reinstall if needed from there. The rest of the information I'm going to give you is basically mod management information. I'm going to switch over to the mod organizer 2 setup I have for special edition. It's much easier to show you things because I got all sorts of stuff set up. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to my Skyrim Special Edition Mod Organizer 2 organizer. And you can see I've basically gone through and set up just a sample of a load order. And you can see we got all of our mods on this side and all of our plugins on this side. I've got one download, for example, later on, and I've set things up to kind of show you a few things. Basically, this is how the left panel works. These are all of your mods that are installed. And basically, you can think that in the way that this is loaded is set by priority. So priority 0 will be loaded first, then priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down. This makes sense when you start talking about what gets loaded first. So Skyrim Script Extender 64, SKSE 64, will be loaded first so all those scripts can be running. And then, of course, Papyrus Util also has scripts, so those need to be running as well for many other mods to work at any given time. Also, what this left panel does, and if you don't understand some of the basic features of Mod Organizer, it leaves you with a blank or clean data folder. For example, I have a bunch of texture mods loaded here. If we go into our main directory for Skyrim Special Edition, look at our data folder, under textures, nothing's there. So you know that what's happening is when the game loads or when you run Mod Organizer 2 and you run the game through Mod Organizer 2 using SKSE or the Skyrim Special Edition loader, whatever you may use, it's going to insert these files directly into the program folder for the game so it loads them. So it's got to run through all these things before it will start the game. So the more mods you have, the longer it takes to load them all up. But that's the basic of it, is that you need to have them in a certain order in order to get the desired effect. So something like Sky UI, which requires SKSE, you want to have it below SKSE scripts, and so forth and so on. This becomes very important when you start installing mods. It doesn't matter when you install the mod like it would for Mod Manager. You could install a mod at any given time and then move them around so that they are in the desired location to get the effect you want. This is most easily seen in things like texture mods, so that you'll know that in Nexus Mod Manager, for example, you would install Skyrim Realistic Overhaul Combined, and then Noble Skyrim, and then Majestic Mountains to get the desired effect of all the textures combined together. If, for example, you've installed a bunch of mods, you can just move them around to the order that you want. If you wanted to add a mod later on, and this is Ragnarok by Gamwich, you could install that mod. And you would just manual right-click on data, set data, meshes, and textures, and press OK. And you've installed it at the bottom when you activate it. you'll see that you actually start to see some conflicts, and conflicts in Mod Organizer are designated as overwrites or overwritten. Anything in green, the mod selected, is overwriting files in those mods that are detected. So you know that you can go ahead and slide this up, and you'll have the same effect as if it were at the very bottom. This brings into the Overwritten Files tab. So what's happening here is if you click on any mod, let's say double click on Ragnarok, it will show you conflicts. Conflicts aren't necessarily bad, it's just the term that we use. Come over to your conflicts tab, and you can see that it is overwriting Skyrim Realistic Overhaul for all these rugs, and also it's overwriting some of Noble Skyrim's rugs as well. So it's overwriting both Skyrim Realistic Overhaul and Noble Skyrim. And that's just how the conflicts work. If I were to take that mod and move it up one, you can see it's overwriting Skyrim Realistic Overhaul, but it's now being overwritten by Noble Skyrim. Double click on it again. Open your conflicts tab, open it up so you can actually see what it's doing. You can see that it's overwriting everything by Skyrim Realistic Overhaul combined, but it's being overwritten by the two rugs, the runner rugs, provided by Noble Skyrim. So it's under Textures, Architecture, Windhelm. The runner rugs, the small, narrow rugs that run down a hallway, is being provided by Noble Skyrim. And that's the essence of conflict resolution, so you get the desired effect. Not every mod will be shown that has conflicts in this system. It is very basic in the way that Mod Organizer 2 is working right now. I don't want Ragnarok in there right now. I've made that decision, so I can remove the mod. And we go right back to the system that we had where Skyrim Realistic Overhaul is... I need to refresh that. Thank you. Skyrim Realistic Overhaul is being overwritten by Noble Skyrim, Majestic Mountains, and Skyrim 3D Trees. Okay, that's just how that works. Not every mod, in this case, you can see Realistic Water 2 is all the way down at the bottom here, need to be together for the overwrites to work. It can be located anywhere. There's something else to understand about overwrites. There are many mods that will be overwriting things that you cannot see. It is a feature that has been limited in Mod Organizer 2 that you used to have in Mod Organizer 1. It's BSA conflict detection. So let's go over to archives. I want to show you this. BSA files. These are Bethesda archives that are going to have content in the background that you need to be aware of. And what these are going to do is they're going to load the information into the game first before any loose files. So that brings us into the concept of loose files. Anything in Majestic Mountains, let's say, open this up, go to your File tab, has meshes and textures. These are considered loose files. Something like Improved Eyes Skyrim, go to your File tab. You will have a BSA that contains more information that may include meshes and textures or other information. Conflict detection will not work. I guarantee that something that is in Improved Eyes Skyrim will be overwriting something from Windsong Immersive Character Overhaul. If you look at the order that they are loaded in the left pane, it will determine the order in which the BSAs are loaded in the right pane when you have archives activated. So if you were to move Improved Eyes Skyrim up above Windsong Immersive Character Overhaul, you can see it's now loading the BSA for Improved Eyes before Windsong Immersive Character Overhaul. And then because Windsong Immersive Character Overhaul is below Improved Eyes, it will be overwriting the information that is contained therein. But you have no way of knowing it unless you were to unpack each of the BSAs and put them into loose files and then reinstall them into Mod Organizer. Everything that's in a BSA will be loaded before anything that's in a loose file. You have to keep that in mind when you're doing things. Unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch is a very large BSA file that contains a lot of fixes. because it contains in a BSA, you may not be able to use your conflict resolution to see if something is changing the Skyrim unofficial patch. That's very important to know. You may want to go ahead and unpack that BSA using something like Bethesda Archive Extractor and installing it through Mod Organizer so you can actually see the conflicts that are there. It is something that has happened because of switching over to 64-bit. The BSA conflict resolution has not been refined enough yet to make it reliable. Something else you can't do in Mod Organizer 2, you can no longer extract BSAs from within Mod Organizer. You need to do it through Bethesda Archive Extractor or some other tool. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, that's a big explanation point. So now we can get back to what we want to really talk about. But that's just generally how things work. As you install mods, you'll be getting all these plugins over here, but we'll get to the right pane in a second. For each of the mods, when you double click on them, let's go ahead and choose Sky UI. When you double click on it, you're going to have options of all these different things in here. It's going to go through text files. If it has a text file, it'll have it any file in some cases. It may have images. This does. These were probably all included in the foam mod that you didn't need to run for Mod Organizer 2, but they're there in the files. Optional ESPs. You can see it has one ESP. It may have more. Conflicts. We talked about the conflicts tabs. No mod is conflicting with Sky UI at this time. Categories. This is the categorization for Sky UI. In this case, it's a UI mod, but you could click something else if you want to categorize that mod as something different. Nexus info. This is the mod ID. This is the version number. You can't really see all of it, but if it's in green, it means no update is available. If it's red, it means there's an update available. You can also manually change that to something else if you wanted to. And this is the basic description as provided by the Nexus on what it is. You have notes. Notes are a very important thing, and they're very useful. You'll see me put in notes every once in a while, and I'll show you how those are showed up. And then the actual file tree. You can see this mod originally contained a foam mod with a bunch of screenshots, SkyUI se.bsa, and an ESP. That's why if you look under archives, you can see it has a SkyUI BSA. Let's go to Majestic Mountains. I want to show you a different example. Double click on Majestic Mountains, open up so you can see what you're doing. You see it has a text file. It'll tell you all about it. The mod author was kind enough to put in a number of notes about its general usage. It has an ini file for the majesticmountains.ini, which is contained in the ESP, majesticmountains.ini. And you could make changes to this if you wished. Let's just say you changed F sparkle size to 13. You just want less sparkles. You would then save that file, and the ini changes would be saved within the mod that has been installed, not within the archive. And those ini changes would take effect. I'm going to put it back to 14 so I don't forget, and save it again. Sometimes the inis will change the ini for another directory, but this is the ini file that's being added through the mod. No images on this, but there are two ESPs. The optional ESP tab is basically going to show you optional ESPs, which will be considered as inactive ESPs, and the available ESPs, which should be renamed as active ESPs. In other words, these are both in my load order on this side. I can't scroll down. There we go. These two right here. So Majestic Mountains, I'll get into that in just a second. Majestic Mountains has two ESPs. If you, for whatever reason, want to disable an ESP but not reinstall the mod itself, you could go ahead and select the mod and move it up. So now it is inactive. If you were to close that tab, you saw the second one go away. And you can simply reactivate that ESP by selecting it and moving it down, close the tab again, and it is back. Easy recognition for some of these things is if you click on a mod, it'll show you the ESPs that are associated with it. You can also do it in reverse. You could click on an ESP on the right pane, and it will show you the mod that it is from in the left pane. As I said, you could go ahead and organize your mod list however you want, but if you are looking for something, you can go by mod name, and I'll do it alphabetically or reverse alphabetically or whatever you want to do. You can do it by flags to see what conflicts you may be having or any notes. And I talked about notes. You can see the MCM fix is installed on Skyrim Unbound. Look for something by category. You could look for something by version. I'm not sure why I even keep that around because it doesn't really provide much effect. But one of the things to remember when doing this is if you're anything other than organizing by priority, you cannot change the order. Drag and drop is only supported when sorting by priority. You cannot change the order unless you're in priority tab. So you can see I can actually move things around again as needed if it's under priority tab. When you right click on a mod, you will get a different dialogues asking you what to do with certain things. At the very top, you have all mods. You can install a mod, and that would be the same as if you install a mod from an archive. Create an empty mod, which sometimes you can need to do, and there's different ways of doing it, and there might be a different reason to do it. Enable all visible, disable all visible. Not sure why you'd want to do those things, but okay. You can check all for update. It would automatically log you into the Skyrim Special Edition Nexus and look for updates for all these different mods. I'm not going to do that right now. I know I've got some I need to update. And you can refresh. And basically this means that it is going to refresh the mod list on the left and the pane on the right to refresh the entire system so that anything that's pending to be put into like an overwrite file or any changes will be refreshed and it will go ahead and update those exactly. You can also export to CSV and it would actually create a text file for you to mess around with that will show a list of all your mods. You can add or remove categories, replace categories, primary category for this mod or whatever it may be. I don't have anything to set those, but you can do that. You can rename the mod. You could remove the mod if you want to disinstall it, or you could reinstall the mod. Basically, it's the same as if you were to install it from downloads. You would see this just like that. So this Noble Skyrim, and you can reinstall the mod if it had some different options that you wanted to change around. You can also open it in Explorer, and it's the same as the file tree that you saw in the tab by double clicking on it. But you can go ahead and open those up and take a look. So there's textures, furniture. You can see we got a wooden bar stool, .dds. If you have something like Paint.net, GIMP, or Photoshop set up to open DDS files by default, you could actually see them and make changes if you wished. We talked about the small lightning bolt that you see under flags with the plus and minus sign. Of course, minus means that it's being overwritten by something. Plus means it's overwriting something. And you can see we talked about the notes that you have under, let's say, the Noble Skyrim with SMIM patch for Noble Skyrim. If you double click on it, if you look under notes, there it is. I put that note in myself to remind myself of something I added to that mod. But you can use notes however way you wanted. The categories, you can go ahead and we talked about filtering, how to actually look at it by filter. We talked about version numbers and priority. There is one other file at the very bottom, and it is called the Overwrite File. This is a catch-all for just about anything that can happen. Let's say I've gone ahead and in this case, I have cleaned the update.esm. There we go, Skyrim update.esm. It is actually in the overwrite. Well, that's because I use SSE edit to clean that file. And when I was done, it put it into the overwrite. If you double click on it, it will tell you the contents of the overwrite folder. In this case, it's update.esm. Well, I'm going to need to do something with that. There are a couple different options. If you were to right click on overwrite, it'll give you some options to do. With all mods, it's the same as you saw before with right-clicking on any mod above. You can create a mod. You can clear the overwrite, which would be the same as deleting the contents thereof. I don't want to do that. Or you can open it in Explorer. And you can see it has update.esm. Or you can see information, and it's the same as double-clicking on it. In this case, I want to go ahead and right-click on it and create a mod. We're going to call it update. That's all I need to do is just call it update and click OK. Now you can see at the very bottom right now, it is considered an update. Don't worry about this. I'll come back and talk about updates and cleaning mods some other time. But that's how you create a mod. I'm going to have to go through, and I've created backups for everything, so you don't have to worry about me messing up my system. But you would go ahead and do the same thing for if you want to rename that, if you want to be really specific, update cleaned, and clean the mod. Now this, of course, took it out of the main data directory. You no longer see update.esm in here anywhere, but that's just how it works. So it took it out of the main directory, cleaned it up, and put it back in. I'll fix all this stuff later. I'm just showing you an example. There may also be times where an overwrite adds something to a mod that you need to add to the mod list on the other side. And let me go through and do something real fast, and I'll show it to you. Also, we need to refresh so that warning message goes away. Let me go do something, and I'll be right back. Okay, you may be wondering what I did. I went into my game, and I pulled up the character that I'm working on, open race menu, and this is race menu alpha for Skyrim Special Edition, just so I can do it. And I exported that profile by just changing his hair. That profile will now be located in my overwrite as indicated by there is some potential problem with your setup up here in the upper right hand corner. If you were to open up your overwrite, you can see it shows SKSE. Well, what's it doing? Plugins, character gen, presets, and it is a preset that you have a name for. Preset 1.3.2018 at the time I did it. Since you know what this is, you know that's being generated by race menu, you would go ahead and take this and you'll find something in race menu. Under the file tree, there is an SKSE folder. Under plugins, you have character gen. Remember I saw the structure in the overwrite. Presets, Sartorius. This is my original preset that I've saved from a previous run through where I've saved the appearance of the main character. So that's all that file structure, SKSE, plugins, character gen, presets, Sartorius. I'm going to close that down. I can open Overwrite, drag SKSE out, and place it into race menu.sse and close it. Now my overwrite is empty. You go into race menu, go back to the file tree, SKSE, plugins, character gen, presets. There are now 2. That's the one I just created. There will be times that other mods will throw things into your overwrite, and this is why having a clean overwrite, do something with your overwrite files at all times so you have a clean one. If a mod generates a log or something, you can then go ahead and open up your overwrite and drag it to the appropriate place by identifying what it is. This way you keep your overwrite clean, and anything that is being generated by that mod will not be generated again into your overwrite if you were to just delete it. Most times there's no problem with that, but it will generate another log for whatever reason inside your overwrite. If you drag it into the mod that it applies to, it will not continue to generate into the overwrite. It will generate it into the mod that generated in the first place. Does that make sense? So I think I've covered most everything that you need to know about this stuff. We talked about BSA, loading of files and the conflict resolution. My suggestion that I would probably unpack the unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch so I know when it's being overwritten by something, so forth and so on. That's the basics. You can add anything or remove anything at any given time. In relation to profiles, if I were to check my testing profile, see it's very different. I only have the bare minimum going on here. And then we have some flags. When I cleaned the update, it was missing the ESM. So it needs to go back up here. And it's back in order. So all those missing flags will be gone. But you can see that it's very different. As far as profiles or lists, the order in which you see them will be unique to each profile. The order in which the ESMs are ordered are unique for this profile. ESMs, ESPs. So you need to keep both in order for the profile that you've got. And just remember that if you make changes in one, it will not affect the other ones. You'll need to reorder it, use loot or whatever. So you can see how all that works. Go back to my Dirty Weasel Media so you can see the next thing I want to talk about. So that's basically how that works with the profiles, and a reminder that you'll need to reorder and make sure all your conflicts work and that you reorder your loot for each of your different profiles. Over in the right-hand tab, you will see, first off, I want to talk about the sort button. The sort button is basically a mod organizer 2 version of loot. I do not use that. I use the loot manual, and that's why I have it on my toolbar so I can do that. I think that with the constant updates to loot, to have to update the sorter on this is probably not the best idea. I've heard of problems in the past. Some people say it works just fine. I don't use it. It's just a personal choice. But let's move on. The plugins tab, you can see under this is the plugins, and I can actually take these things and move them around. Just like I do on the left pane, I can take an ESP or an ESM and move them around. Of course, ESMs can't really move around that much because they are restricted. Like this one is listed as an ESP, but it is categorized as an ESM. When you hover over an individual mod, we talked about the fact that you could see what it's coming from, and it will actually give you notes if you hover over it. You can see its origin, who the author is, and the enabled masters. In other words, these are masters that need to be above this ESP to make it work, and that's very useful. If I were to take something away and say the enabled master is the WICO immersive people required master, let's say there it is. If I were to untick it, I would get a warning saying, oh, you are missing a master. It's missing master WICO immersive people.esp. That's because I deactivated it. Just like on the left side, you can deactivate a mod at any given time by unclicking it. Took away WICO, they both go away. Put it back, it'll remember it. So it remembered where I put it. Lots of information on this. It'll also give you description notes, occasionally these little paper clips. So it'll give you more information than what's already there. But in general, this is your load order that is very commonly referred to as, plugins, plugin load order, whatever it may be. And this will have a great effect on how your game runs. But there's not much to remember other than they may contain a BSA that will change the order in which they're installed. But anyways, there's not much to say on that. Downloads. We talked about the download tab a little bit. If you show hidden, you can see everything that's here. If you're to right click on, and this is all the ones you've hidden, by the way. So I'll get to hidden in just a second. If you were to right click on it, you see Ragnarok Special Edition. Or right click on it, you've got some options. You can install it. You've seen me install it. You can delete it, which would delete it both from the hard drive and from the downloads tab altogether. You can remove it from view. And remove from view is basically remove it from the non-hidden. If you were to remove it from view and show hidden again, it will show it because it's the file type done. You'll see that it is back in the hidden section. So this is just a way of keeping things clean. If you wanted to unhide it, you would right click on it again and unhide. And it's right back. One thing to remember, if you right click on it and you say delete installed, you can delete the installation there of the installed mod. Do not ever click delete all. Do not ever click delete all. Just don't. It'll delete everything out of your download folder. That's very bad. Don't do that. And you remove the installed. It'll remove it from the left panel and remove all. Just don't do these things. Just if it says all, that's too definitive. Don't do that. Just don't. Just be very careful when you start doing things below remove from view. So for right now, I'm just going to remove it from view. And we'll go back to the other tabs. We've talked about plugins. We talked about archives. We talked about the archives and the fact that these are BSAs, and all BSAs are loaded before loose files on the left pane. And you can change the order thereof by moving them around in the left pane. You can see we made a change right there. Improved dies below WICO. And it'll actually give you that note, list of available Bethesda archives. Archives not checked are not managed by Mod Organizer, and ignore installation order. All right. Basically, that's telling you that all the BSAs will be installed before any of the loose files on the left. Data tab. This data tab can be considered a preview of what is being installed through Mod Organizer when you run it through when you run the game through Mod Organizer. Let's take a look at, you can see all of this stuff. These are the BSAs, BSLs that are being installed with WICO. So you have all those BSAs that would be installed right there. Let's take a look at textures because they're always the easiest to say. Textures, architecture. Let's go Riften. It's a good example. Everything that's in Riften that's being overwritten by a mod. You can see most of them are provided by Noble Skyrim, which is what I want. A couple of them being provided by a Skyrim Realistic Overhaul. And you go down and down and down. You have full pack. Whenever you see red, that means that there are multiples being overwritten. So in this case, Noble Skyrim is overwriting something in Skyrim Realistic Overhaul combined. So there's two choices. But just remember that. So if it's in red, it's probably two different mods that are overwriting the same file, and it's showing you the winner in red. If you see something in black, that means that it's only one mod overwriting the original, and it is the winner. So there aren't two. We can go farther and farther down. If for whatever reason you want to see the texture, you can go ahead and open it. And whatever program file you have, this is paint.net, you can actually see the texture to know what you're looking at. And you may decide that you want to go back and hide it. Yes, you can hide textures, and this is one of the things that Mod Organizer will do. But this is a good way to see what's winning overall. And that's just kind of how things run. You know, the archives or the data tab will show you every winner that goes on for your texture mods. Also in your data tab, you may find other things like executables from like Finis. You may find them in here, and I will give you specific directions on what to do with them. But you could, the same thing where you saw, you could right click on it, open and execute, or add as executable. If it is an executable.exe, such as like finis.exe, you could add it as executable, and it would open up the dialog menu the same as the executable button. Then you can assign it a name, assign it a symbol, whatever you need to do. But those are very specific directions, and I'm not going to get into them right now. But it shows you where you can do those type of things. Saves. These are saves that are generated for this profile. You can see this is Dirty Weasel Media. I don't have many saves going on there. If you go to testing, I've got none. If you go to default, it's got a bunch. It's going to show you everything. The same thing goes with vanilla. I think I changed them over. Nope, there's only one under the vanilla profile, but you get the idea. And if you wanted to, you could go ahead and right click and delete that save. Remember how I said you could hide textures? Well, you can do it in a certain way. You open up Majestic Mountains. This is a little more advanced, but I wanted to show you it all the same. Open up Majestic Mountains. We know it has some conflicts, and it's being overwritten by Realistic Water 2, and that's perfectly fine. And then you have 7 conflicts under Majestic Mountains that are overriding Noble Skyrim. Well, let's say, that Tundra Moss. I don't like the Tundra Moss provided by Majestic Mountains. I'm going to need to go look for that, and this is my preferred way of doing it, is under Textures, Landscape, Tundra Moss, 01.dds. Go to your file tree, Textures, Landscape, or was it Terrain? There it is, the Tundra Moss. It was under Mountain. It was under Landscape. I just missed it. Tundra Moss, 01.dds. You say, I don't like that texture, and you can actually go look at that texture, open it with Pane.net or wherever you have, and say, I hate that moss texture. It's driving me crazy every time I see it. Well, you can actually hide it. You right-click on it, and you press Hide. And now you can see it is a hidden file. It'll change the name of it to .dds.modorganizer-hidden. So you'll never see it again, and it won't show up in your conflicts. And anytime you see that Tundra Moss, it'll be provided by Noble Skyrim. Does that make sense? So if you decide, oh, you know what, I really did like that better, you can right-click on it and unhide it, and it'll go right back to the way it was. Just a little something advanced there. There's a lot of things you can do with Mod Organizer 2. You can see I have all my executables up and running. I've got everything I need for profiles. I can go ahead and change things around. I can add things through the Overwrite folder. I can move my mods around. I can sort it by loot. I can do everything I want. And I can do a lot of fine tuning with opening or closing folders inside of the individual mods and hiding things if I want. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more things to teach you on this, but this is just the basic overview with some more advanced features so you can understand the power of Mod Organizer too. I hope this was helpful. I know it's quite long. I hope the timestamps in the description helped you get through all this stuff, and I'll make perfect sense of it when I write the description. I hopefully will get you through it. But there were some differences between Mod Organizer 1 and Mod Organizer 2, some improvements and some not so improved things, some things that don't work anymore. My name's Cal. I'm from Dirty Weasel, and I'm signing off.